All right, some of this is going to be a review, but I just want to talk about the isometric view really quick and how that relates to the front view. So anytime you see an isometric view, this face right here pointing in, which would be this face, is going to be your front view. If this was oriented like so, this would be the front view. And in any way that you stick it, this would be the front view. And this just gets assigned, this has just been assigned the front view, just arbitrarily. When you draw this part in the software, you know, the person who drew this started with this and they extruded it out. So that got labeled the front view. You can change that, but anytime you see a print, this is going to be the front view. And like we talked about in one of the other videos, everything stands off the front view. There's the front view. We go up to see the top view, which is like this. We go this way to see the left view, and this way to see the right view. All right, guys, one of the other things that is very important to keep in mind when you're reading a blueprint is the scale of the drawing. So this is right here. If you can see that, that is a 1:2 ratio. So it's half the size in real life as it is on this print, right? And we can kind of see that it's about half the size. Scaling is important to understand because you could be building a bridge and you're going to get a blueprint and the bridge fits on this blueprint. It's not actually that big. Cars are going to drive across it, right? So scale is important to know, to keep in your mind the general size of the part. It's not always going to be real life size. Now we can take a look at some of these other blueprints. If you notice, this one right here, really hard to see, but it says it's a scale 1:1. So this should be an actual part. Now what happened with this, when I printed this out, the print center said it would be easier for them to print it on smaller paper. So that's something to take in mind. It says 1:1, but we know simply by looking at some of these dimensions that is not, that right there, that dimension says 1.25. That's not 1.25 inches in real life. So we know that the scale here is off, and the reason why is because it's been shrunk down in printing of it. So that's something to keep in mind. Always be paying attention to your scale and make sure that it makes sense. So in the bottom right corner of a blueprint, you're going to find this. This is called the title block. So in here we have the title. This is the name of the part, 3 main views. This is the name of the drawing. This is the size of paper that we used. Right here goes in revisions. There's a bunch of different information here. You can put different numbers here if the part's been revised several different times. You'll have revision 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Down here you have the person who drew the part, who checked the part, if it needed an engineer approving, a manufacturing approving, and QA, and any comments. So in this section you're going to find lots of different notes and information that will tell you things about the blueprint. For example, we have here dimensions. You're going to have your dimension tolerance here, plus or minus, whatever the designer says. Usually when we're welding, we're dealing with 1/16. If you're in machining, you're dealing with thousandths of an inch. So that's something to pay attention to. And then there's going to be a little disclaimer right here in most of them. And lots of information here, so it's always good to go down and read this before you start building your part. And there's going to be your scale. There's an approximate weight and how many sheets there are in the blueprint. It is very common to have blueprints that have multiple pages, like 1 to 5. Another thing to keep your eye on when you're looking at a blueprint is looking for tables, charts, or lists. And those are going to be attached anywhere throughout the blueprint. So you got to kind of look around for them. Right here we have some notes. These are some things that you should read before you start building these parts. A lot of times you'll see a cut list. So if you're building like a rack, you're going to need so many pieces that go across. You're going to need vertical pieces. You're going to need side pieces. So you can see a cut list up here that'll tell you exactly what parts to cut before you start welding, so that you know exactly what to cut, how many to cut, and what length to cut them. There'll be a lot of different information, and it's going to depend on the part that you're building, so it's always good to give the blueprint one good look over and make sure that you read all of the information on it. Some of it might pertain to you, some of it might pertain to somebody further on down the line in the manufacturing of that part. But it's a good idea to always look over the blueprint and read any notes, lists, or comments that are on the blueprint. So this is called a detail view. Right here we're looking at these two holes specifically. So if we look close, you see that that hole is labeled with an A right there. We come over to here, we see detail view A, and it's got its own scale, 2:1. And through here is the detail view, so we can see those holes much closer now. We can see that there's 4 of them, and there's a dimension, 0.275. Now, one of the things that's important to notice is this is a solid line right here, and as we come up here, this line's a little bit squiggly. You see that? That goes to show that right here is where it intersects the part. So that squiggly line is where it intersects the part, and where it is solid is open space. So this is the right view of that same part we've been working with. And if you watch the line video, you know that this is a sectional line, and it cuts away like as if we were to cut it with a knife, and opens it up so we can see it. Right over here, we look close, that's section CC, right in between C and C, and the arrows are pointing at which direction we're looking. So we can see there that the depth of the indent is 1/2 inch right there, and we get a much better look at the holes in the counter bore, which if you look on the part you can see pretty easily. But it's nice to have these sectional views so you can really get more detail. Now this is a cutaway view based off of the isometric view. So we go down and we can see it's the same scale. That is there just to show us this detail right here, how deep that hole goes in there. Now you could throw a dimension on that so that you would know how deep to drill that hole if you were assigned the task to drill the holes in the top. Sometimes you'll see a view like this line right here. This line has been put in to do a sectional view just right here. So this part is still whole and this part has been cut away. And you can see that by this line that goes right there. So we discussed this briefly in one of the other videos, but we have this view right here between B and B, which is going to show us this face with the indents in it. This face right here. So we can go up, and if you look right here, we have view BB. That is going to show us that face right there.